If you watch this live stream to the end, you're going to learn something about yourself. Diddy is still in court waiting for his verdict. And they say that he's a scientist from Manhattan. I don't know if he's homosexual or not, but some people are saying it's a gay dude. And they're saying he's also a liberal. So, they're saying that this trial is being held up. We're going to get through that information, but also we're going to talk about the latest updates. And it seems like Diddy's mom is terrified. And the longer you wait for the jury to deliberate, I can imagine the more nerve-wracking that it is. And the more you wonder, like, what's going on back there? Because they've been deliberating for over a day. And I believe that they're going to be deliberating it until probably another day. We'll probably find out a little bit more later on. So that's the first part of this. 1 second. And we're going to get into all that in a second. 1 second. But we also want to jump into how much time is Diddy actually facing? Like how much time is he going to really get if he's convicted? I mean, even on one of the basic charges, what is he looking at? Because I think that's important too. So we're going to go through that information, and then we're going to hear from what this lawyer has to say about the situation and see if we got the full picture here. So we start every live stream the same way. We're going to start that way today. We start with a prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you humbly, God, thanking you for another day. I ask that you bless everybody that's listening, their children, God, their families, as they go to and from where they're listening from. God, I ask that you give them traveling mercy. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, man. Let's jump into it. Let's see what's going on. So yesterday in court, it was reported that the jurors in the Sean Diddy Combs federal criminal trial continue to deliberate for over 5 hours of discussion, which were gun trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution each, right? And it says if he's found guilty of the most serious charges, he could face up to life in prison, right? But we're going to talk about the other charges as well. And then yesterday, what happened was the judge instructed the jury on the charges because the jury sent a note in, and they were concerned that one juror wasn't really following the judge's instructions. So they sent in a note to the judge, let the judge know, hey, this juror right here, he's not following your instructions, Your Honor. What do you want us to do about this? How you want us to deal with it? The judge sent the note back, said, basically, you guys need to follow the law. These are my instructions. If you don't follow the law, you're breaking the law. Bottom line. There's 5 jurors that are not in court that they're alternate jurors. So if somebody does give the court a problem, then the judge can just pick one of those alternate jurors and swap them in, but they don't want to have to do that, obviously. But that's kind of what happened yesterday, to give a summary. And so the judge sent the note back and said, this is what you guys need to do. And every time a note comes from the jury requesting information from the judge or anything like that, the judge has to respond to it, but also has to listen to the prosecution and the defense and and has to confer with them on how to respond to it. So the Diddy's lawyers get to give an opinion on how the judge should respond to it, as well as the feds. They get to give an opinion. I think you should respond like this, Your Honor. And then the judge sits, he thinks about both sides, and he makes a decision based on that. Right? So today, the jury sent in another note. So they're still waiting on this verdict. We still waiting on everybody. I think the world is waiting on the verdict to see what's going on. And it says that another note was sent in, and it was toward this note actually was sent in yesterday, and then it was answered today, but it was toward it was questioning the charges that Diddy is facing. And this is significant because we can look at it and say, then after all this trial, I think it was 2 months of trial, they still not sure exactly what the charges were. They're not sure exactly why Diddy's here. That might be, a potential red flag or a green flag for Diddy, right? So the judge got a note from the jury, and it said that it was a question about the distribution of the controlled substances. And the judge said that he would answer it tomorrow, which is today. right? And they were unsure about, I guess the jury is unsure about the drug distribution that Diddy is accused of. And I believe that some people out there are as well. And maybe the prosecution didn't answer in their presentation of their case. They didn't answer exactly how this relates or how this is drug distribution clearly to the jury. So maybe that's the reason why. But that's a problem if you're the prosecution, because if you didn't answer them clearly, then they don't understand, and maybe they won't convict because they don't understand. See, a confused person doesn't make a decision. And that's across the board in life. When you have a lot of options, it's really hard to make a decision. And when you're confused, it's really hard to make a decision. So a confused person, a confused juror is an overwhelmed juror, and they're not going to make a decision. Right? So this is why they're sending notes back to the judge. Now, the judge took into account what the prosecution said, and he also took into account what the Fed said, what the defense said, Diddy's lawyers. And so he responded to the jury and gave them instructions, further instructions on what distribution is. And obviously the judge, before he sent the jurors back the first time, he gave them instructions on all the charges that Diddy was facing and what they had to convict based on, right? Because it's not a social media comment section in court. So it's not based on opinion. It's not based on what you think he said, she said. It's based on, this is the legal definition of this crime. Did they prove that he did the legal definition of this crime? Take your feelings out of it. On this piece of paper, did he do this, right? So the judge gave a response to the jury's question. The court referred the juries to page 37, lines 1 through 3 of the jury charge. And then it quotes language from the original instructions that the judge gave. So those lines from the charge say this, quote, "The word distribution means actual, constructive, or not and, or attempted transfer. To distribute means to deliver, to pass over, or to hand something over to another person, or to cause it to be delivered, passed on, or handed over to another. Distribution does not require sale." So if you guys remember, during the closing statements that the prosecution made, they listed all the drug dealers that Diddy had completed drug transactions with. It was like 4 of them. And those drug dealers were handing drugs to Diddy's employees, and Diddy's employees were taking the drugs back to him, allegedly. Also, the Jane Doe that testified, she said that she got on the stand and testified and said, "I was the one that was I would take ecstasy from Los Angeles to Miami on Diddy's jet. He requested it of me, and I would take the drugs, get on the plane. I was scared to get on the plane. I never transported drugs before, but his chief of staff, Christina Karam, told me that she does it all the time and I would be fine." That's what was reported, and that's what she testified to on the stand. So that's where the drug distribution conversation kind of comes from. It's from Diddy hiring ex-assistants to do the drug distribution, and also from the Jane, which is one of his former ex-girlfriends who's a victim, who says she's a victim and testified as a victim of the sex trafficking. And she says that she was taking drugs for Diddy back and forth from, LA to Miami. And so I think the important language in the legal definition of the word distribution is when it says to deliver means, or to distribute simply means to deliver, to pass over, or to hand over something to another person, or to cause it. That's the part where it's like, okay, yeah, Diddy might be caught up. Or to cause it to be delivered, passed on, or handed over to another. Distribution does not require sale. That's very telling, right? So I think that's where Diddy is having the charge. I don't know if the jury is going to convict on that charge based on them being confused, but maybe this provides some clarity. It seems like they're doing a really thorough job of deliberating and going through all 5 charges and saying which part of these is really something we need to convict on, right? So we'll see how that plays out. I think we should talk about how much time Diddy is facing. And I have it here for each charge. So this says that Sean Diddy Combs faces potentially significant prison time if convicted on the charges he is facing. The specific charges and the potential penalties are as follows. On the racketeering conspiracy, if he's convicted on this charge, Combs faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. The sex trafficking, if he gets a conviction on sex trafficking, that charge carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years. Mandatory minimums, they suck, man. Because it's like no matter what, even if the judge like you, even if the judge feel like I want to give you less time, the judge is required to give you a certain amount of time because he has laws he got to follow too. So the mandatory minimum, if he's convicted of one count of trafficking, that means if the jury determines at any time, like I don't care if Cassie was complicit the whole time, and then one night she said she didn't want to do it, that's considered trafficking. If the Jane was like, you know what, I wanted to do every freak off except one, that's considered trafficking. So I don't know how he beats that. We'll see. Maybe the jury is like, but I don't know, man. But the mandatory minimum on one conviction, if he's convicted of one of them, is 15 years. And then the maximum sentence on that is life in prison. So the judge has a discretion on, should I give him anywhere between 15 and life in prison? And then he has the transportation to engage in prostitution, which I think he's 100% going to jail for. I don't think he could beat that at all, right? Which I would assume that his goal is, he probably knows he's going to prison for a while, but I think that his lawyers probably would hope that he beats the racketeering conspiracy and the trafficking, because you can get life in prison for those. The transportation to engage in prostitution, I think that he's not too much worried about it. You know what I'm saying? Because he probably knows he's guilty of that. And they say the maximum sentence of that is 10 years in prison. So he could get 1 year, he could get 10, 5 years, he can get 10, but the maximum is 10 associated with that charge. So I can't see how I could possibly see him beating the racketeering or the trafficking just based on, because that's just one juror, right? One juror comes forward and say, I don't believe none of this. And it's a mistrial, or maybe maybe the entire jury says, we don't believe Cassie and Jane. I don't know, because Cassie got up there pregnant, but that may not matter at this point, because I think that as a juror, the jury probably forgot everything in a sense. Like they remember the big splash moments. They're human. So they're not really sitting there thinking about every little detail the way the feds would. They just heard the case. They heard all the details. They watched the evidence, and okay, now we got to make a decision. Right? Just to give a kind of quick definition of what these charges are and what they mean. For the racketeering and conspiracy charge, it said it allows for the prosecution of individuals who participate in a pattern of racketeering activity associated with an enterprise, whether legitimate or illegitimate. Basically, if you have a legal company and you start doing crime with it, racketeering right away, right? A conviction requires, or even if it's a illegal company like a gang or the mob, right? A mafia organization or something like that. Like those are illegitimate enterprises. You can't find a tax form on those enterprises, but they're still considered enterprises. So that's why it says whether legitimate or illegitimate. It says a conviction requires demonstrating a pattern of at least two related racketeering activities within a 10-year period of time. So basically, two of these crimes have to be committed. Let's say I did one on year 1 and then I did another one on year 10. That's two crimes within 10-year period of each other, and they have to be one of these predicate offenses, which I'm about to name right now. The predicate offenses can include a range of serious crimes such as murder, kidnapping, bribery, extortion, drug dealing, arson, mail or wire fraud, and more, right? So if Diddy is found to have had an employee do one crime, and that same employee does a second crime within a 10-year period of each other, and they do it in commission of furthering or in for any reason that Diddy pretty much they're making Diddy the leader of it. He's the kingpin of it in the judge's mind or in the Fed's mind. So if they did it to further Diddy or to further his organization and is determined, he's guilty of racketeering at that point. That's the RICO. Now, the sex trafficking. This is a crime that involves exploiting a person for commercial sex acts through force, threats, fraud, or coercion. Force, threats, fraud, or coercion. This is why it was so important for the Cassie video for the feds, because when she's getting beat up in that hotel, they're going to say he's forcing her to do these acts. And if she doesn't do these acts, this is what happens, right? This is why it's so important for some of the employees that testified against Diddy, because the threats, when they say, yeah, I would have had to, he told me I would lose my job and I never work in this business again and stuff like that. Those are threats, right? And also a little bit of coercion. So, you know, the Fed's presenting that he used these employees to cover up this stuff or to make this stuff happen. That's RICO. And then, you know, the trafficking, we understand that. Sometimes we look at trafficking as he snatched her, threw her in the trunk, took her 6 countries away, and she never saw her family again. That's not trafficking. It is trafficking, but that's not only trafficking. Trafficking also just, hey, if you move somebody across state lines for the purpose of prostitution, you traffic them. That's just that's the way the law determines it now. Maybe 10 or 15, maybe even 20, 25 years ago, it would have been considered pimping and pandering, right? But once you start moving across state lines, you know, they kind of got those laws out of here and said, no, we're going to start calling this trafficking, human trafficking now, or sex trafficking now. The legal definition says that sex trafficking is a type of human trafficking and is a serious felony under both federal and state laws. If the victim is a minor under 18 years old, proof of force, fraud, or coercion isn't even needed for a conviction. So that's crazy too. And then he's facing the transportation to engage in prostitution, which is pretty straightforward. This is a charge that specifically relates to transporting individuals across state or international borders for the purpose of engaging in prostitution or in other illegal sexual activity, meaning I paid them to sleep with me. That's a crime. It says this crime can be charged even if the illegal sexual activity doesn't occur, as long as the intent was present. And this is why I tell my fellas, when you fly a woman out with the intent to sleep with her, and then you get mad because she don't sleep with you, and then you don't want to fly her back, she could literally walk into the police precinct and say, he transported me to engage in prostitution. And you're going to go to court and you're going to say, but I never slept with her. I never even did nothing. She didn't even give me, I ain't even. And the law says you can be charged with this even if the sexual activity does not occur, as long as the intent was present. So if you texting her and you say, man, if you ain't going, then I ain't giving you this, or if you ain't going, then that's a crime. Be careful. Just be wise. Just think about what you're doing before you do it. That's all I'm gonna say. So that's what you know Diddy is facing, and these are the things that the jury has to consider when they're thinking about his charges, and these are the things that the jury has to consider when they're trying to understand if they find him guilty or not guilty. And we got a poll in the chat. And you guys let me know what you think. Do you think Diddy is going to be found guilty, not guilty, or do you think it's going to be a hung jury and a mistrial? And it looks like right now 62% of people are saying guilty, 21% are saying not guilty, 17% are saying hung jury or mistrial. So it's almost about 60-40. People think that he's going to jail after this. I think that they're going to find him guilty on, I don't know if they find him guilty on all the charges. But we'll see. We'll see. I think he is guilty of all the charges, but I don't know that they'll find him guilty on all the charges. But that's just because you always, with the story of this wild card juror and with this other stuff going on, you know, there's no telling. Also, it's a subscriber only chat. If you're not a subscriber, you can't be in the chat. So let's talk about what Diddy's mom is doing. It seems like Diddy's mom is panicking in court. You know, and obviously she's a mother, but as this trial goes on, she has a lot to think about as well because her lifestyle. and the kids' lifestyle, and everything is on the line, right? Excuse me. So the live report from court today says that Diddy briefly spoke to his mom before heading back to his cell. Says the defense attorneys and prosecutors are now adjourned following a brief court session this morning. Meanwhile, the jury continues to deliberate. Sean Diddy Combs stopped to talk to his mother, Janice Combs, who was seated in the galley before leaving the courtroom with the marshals. Combs leaned over and whispered to his mother, telling her that he was heading back to his cell. He then said, quote, "Just relax. It's going to be all right." He added that he loved her outfit. She's wearing a green and cream zebra print outfit or something. Now, the jury has also sent another note in to the judge, and the lawyers for both sides had to re-enter the courtroom. The jury asked for transcripts of 2 of the witnesses' testimonies, right? And that was according to the prosecutor. So they wanted the transcripts from 2 witnesses that testified. So Diddy came back into the courtroom, and he had to wait for the information about the jury's latest note to the judge. And so his family came back in. Obviously, they sitting around, they just waiting to see, is it going to be called today? You know, and that's a nerve-wracking thing. They said Diddy requested some books in his cell. He just sitting in his holding cell waiting to see what his future is going to look like. And obviously, he might start, this might be the place where you start to feel it the most. Like, man, am I going to jail for real? Because I believe that the jurors is just back there arguing particulars. When they asked about the drug dealing or the drug distribution thing, it's like, that seems like they just breaking down the particulars. Okay, is this, is this, that? And they're trying to gauge what's significant and what's not significant, right? So the jury sent in a note asking for several transcript sections. The first one was Cassie Ventura's testimony regarding the Intercontinental Hotel incident. So they wanted to see what Cassie said about the hotel incident, in the situation where she got beat up. It said they also wanted Cassie's testimony concerning the events at the Canes, and those that immediately followed. They also wanted Cassie's testimony, if any, regarding the interactions of the freak-offs with the prostitute Daniel Phillip. Those are the 3. And then the 4th one, the jury wanted the transcripts of Phillip's testimony. Daniel Phillips, who was a prostitute, alleged, or he I guess he testified to it. Daniel Phillips' testimony regarding the Essex Hotel incident, with Cassie. So they just wanted transcripts to review. They wanted to go through it line by line. That makes me feel like somebody in that juror room is trying to like pick it apart and be like, nah, but. And, you know, maybe that's the case. Maybe somebody in there is not 100% convinced, or they feel like Cassie's not a victim. It says the parties are reviewing the transcripts to identify excerpts that respond to the jury's request. So those are the key testimonies that the jury is requesting right now, and they're reviewing those. That's what's going on currently. Now, we have to talk about the implications if Diddy is convicted. I believe when he is convicted, of what that means for his fortune, because he obviously was a billionaire before, but now they say he lost about $700 million on his net worth. So they said his net worth is still about $400 million in assets, and all those assets are at risk. We're going to talk about that in a second, and then we're going to teach a business lesson to all my entrepreneurs and all my professionals, business professionals that are listening, because you guys know we do this entertainment news from the entrepreneur perspective. We'll talk about that in the second half, but I want to get into what this lawyer who has been breaking this entire case down, what he had to say. Salute to the Kent Law Firm. And I think that he's been entertaining, but he's also been very informative. So we're going to hear what he has to say about all this information that I just gave you guys, and then we'll jump back into, the information about Diddy's legal, and then we'll finish off with our community hour. Let's see what he has to say.
Tuesday morning, a lot of questions about my thoughts on hung juries and things of that nature, and possibly what's happened with jury selection currently going on. Here's a couple of things to understand. One, It happens a lot. Now, there's been thoughts whether or not they currently have a runaway jury going on. What does a runaway jury mean? Runaway jury means is you have one juror who just says, or multiple, who just says, we're going to do whatever the hell we want to do. We're not going to follow instructions. So let's talk about that first. So there's been reports that there's one juror sitting out there saying, I ain't doing shit. Can't nobody tell me nothing.
Hit that like button if you're just coming in, please.
I don't know if that's true, not true, but let's say for argument's sake, it is. One, couple of things. Maybe everybody in the jury room is trying to convince this juror of something, and that happens. You have multiple jurors who are trying to convince one person, and this person says, I'm not going to vote guilty no matter what, or not guilty no matter what. We don't know what's happening. So they can try to convince him. That person can say, I ain't going to do whatever the hell I want to do. Or there can be what's called a compromise verdict. And that happens a lot of times. What happens with compromise verdicts is when they say, look, if you and there's horse trading that goes on behind the, there's horse trading that goes on in jury rooms. They sit there and they say, look, will you at least vote for this? People have been talking about the question that came out and the question that came out from the jury. The question that came out concerned drug distribution. The question was, is it drug distribution if one person gives drugs to another person? Well, of course, the answer is yes. And so one of the questions about that was whether or not the judge should be able to instruct and basically redefine the law. Well, they're not supposed to do that. The law is supposed to be what the law is. You're not supposed to go to a jury and just tell them the law to get them to convict. Let's try to convince them of this, convict them of that. Usually what happens in those situations, the judge will give back an instruction that says the following. You have the law with you. You have heard all the evidence in the case. The decision is now up to you. You don't go back and try to recorrect them and regrade them, tell them what the prosecutor, tell them what the judge wants them to hear so that there can be a conviction. And then finally, what happens if they can't render a decision? What happens if that one juror potentially says, I ain't doing shit. I ain't voting against my guy. I got all the Bad Boy albums, Been Around the World and I. What happens if that happens? Do they do it again? Yeah, they got to do the whole mess again. Usually it's much harder to try a case a second time. So if you go to somebody, make him a plea offer, see if he will plead to something differently, knowing how the case is going probably won't happen, but you just never know. So those are my thoughts. We'll see what ends up happening. Normally, I would have thought that there would have been a verdict of some type late today or early tomorrow. But if you've got a holdout juror and they're strong, you just never know.
So that's what's going on in the court. And obviously, with that being the situation, if that is the situation, you got a holdout juror, then we're going to be waiting for deliberations to end for a while, right? And I think that lawyer has done a great job of breaking down this case as well and giving us some of the insights of what the law actually states. And jury is the jury, I think it seems like a lot of them are pretty clear on what they want to vote. And then maybe you have one or two that are not so clear. So I want to, let's see if we want to go here. Let's revisit the testimony that they requested. So the jury requested the testimony from Daniel Phillips, who was accused of being, or who testified to being a prostitute that Diddy hired for freak offs. And so we can revisit what he said, and then we'll jump into Diddy's money. It says, as the jury continues to deliberate in the trafficking and racketeering conspiracy trial of Diddy Combs, they have already sent in several notes to the court with questions. Today, they've requested the transcript of Daniel Phillip, the male review manager who testified early at the trial, that he was paid between $700 and $6,000 to sleep with Cassie Ventura on several occasions. The jury also requested any testimony from Cassie regarding her interactions or freak-offs with Phillips. Philip was one of the first witnesses to take the stand when the trial began. He testified not only about being paid to sleep with Cassie, but also about on occasion when Cassie Ventura instructed him to urinate on her while Diddy watched. Philip further testified that Combs recorded them sleeping with each other on 1 or 2 occasions using a cell phone and a camcorder. During the first encounter around 2012, Philip testified that he went to the New York City hotel expecting to perform at a bachelorette party, and instead he only found Ventura and a man wearing a mask whose voice he recognized as Diddy's. Some weird stuff Diddy was doing, man. Y'all remember, if y'all watch Power, you remember the episode of Power when Ghost went to Simon Stern's penthouse? That's what I picture when I hear about these Diddy stories. Like Diddy was Simon Stern. He was up there doing the weird stuff in the penthouse. Anyways, so he said he recognized the voice as Diddy's, and then he received money from Cassie to quote have sex with her. Philip recounted one incident in which he testified that he saw Diddy shout at Cassie before quote dragging her by her hair. He was dragging her by her hair into the bedroom. He said he heard Cassie screaming and repeatedly saying, "I'm sorry," while also hearing what sounded like Combs slapping her. Phillips said he did not report the incident because he feared for his own life. He said, quote, "I was completely shocked and messed up in my head. There was nothing I could do. She was afraid. I could see she was afraid." So he got on the stand during the first 2 days of trial and testified to that. So lawyers are kind of debating right now which parts of the testimony from Cassie are the excerpts that are responsive to the jury's request for the Intercontinental Hotel incident. So I think that the jury, there's probably some jurors in there that are bringing these transcripts back up so they can prove to this other juror that's trying to essentially be a dick, that, bro, look at the transcripts. Look at what was being said. These people testified that this is what happened. This ain't a social media comment section, bro. This is what really happened, according to these people that were there. So, I think that that's what's going on. Now, in terms of Diddy's finances, I think this is where his mom would be panicking, and this is why he got to calm everybody down from the courtroom, because, if he gets convicted, most of his stuff is getting seized, because they're going to say that everything that he built was from an illegal enterprise. Like you were operating it, you were using a criminal enterprise, and everything you did. And this is the business side of what the feds do, because nobody's going to question when this stuff gets seized where the stuff went, how much did they sell it for? This it becomes government property, right? So here are some of the things that some of the assets that are at risk, right? And it says that the article right here from USA Today says Diddy is fighting a Justice Department forfeiture action that could cost him much, if not most, of an empire that the prosecutors allege he used as a part of a criminal racketeering enterprise from 2008 to the present. So his lawyers have hired a consultant, the former deputy chief of the Justice Department's asset forfeiture and money laundering section. So I want to be clear, they're not saying he money laundered. They're saying that they hire somebody that used to work in that division to see what the best advice is for Diddy moving forward. So Forbes estimated that Combs' net worth is around $400 million, which is a significant drop from 2019, when it was $740 million. Both Combs and his team later claimed that he was a billionaire. Forbes said, despite offering no documentation to back up the claim. Whatever, right? Combs' most valuable personal possession is likely a 17,000 square foot home, 10-bedroom mansion, and it was appraised at more than $61 million. And this is the one in LA. This is the one that was raided as a part of a criminal probe, and it was listed for sale last September. Then Combs also owns a 9,600 foot house on Toluca Lake, just north of the Hollywood sign in LA. So he owns a $48 million mansion, also at 2 West Star Island in Miami. And then at one, he owns an adjacent property at One West Star Island. On August 20th, 2024, Diddy paid off the $18.9 million mortgage so he could put up 2 West Stars as collateral in his failed efforts to obtain bail and stay out of jail while awaiting trial. So Diddy said, I'm going to pay these houses off, take whatever money we got, pay the houses off so we can use them as collateral. So there's no loans or nothing like that on them. We can use them as collateral and try to get me out of jail. And then he still didn't get out of jail, which sucks for him. Now, those are the homes that they're going to seize if he's convicted. Also, they're going to seize his plane, his jet. So Combs owns the Gulfstream G550. That's a nice jet. And it's valued at over $25 million. And he calls it Love Air, which he rents out. He rents this jet out while also seeking a sale to help pay his enormous legal expenses. So he's trying to pay his lawyers off, and he's trying to sell a jet right now so he can pay the lawyers off. But he ain't having no luck. Obviously, people gonna feel weird about buying anything from Diddy right now. Diddy's record company. So this is also it's crazy because his businesses are also open to forfeiture. It says Combs Bad Boy Records, which still generates money from the recordings and music publishing rights since he launched the company in 1993. At its founding in 2013, Combs' parent company, Combs Enterprise, later renamed Combs Global, included his New York City-based Bad Boy Entertainment Company, Combs Wines, and Combs Spirits, the Aqua Hydrate Water Firm, Revolt Media, Sean John Fashion and Fragrances, Capital Preparatory Charter Schools, and the Sean Combs Foundation, his charity. Right? So, over the years, it expanded to include new business units and ventures such as Empower Global, Our Fair Share, and Love Records, which focused on R&B. Diddy's art collection is also at risk. These are all things that the government is going to seize if he's convicted. So you could imagine why his family is like super panicking. Hit that like button if you're just coming in or if you haven't hit it yet for me, please. So his family would be panicking because it's like, bro, we're not about to live in the mansion no more. We're not about to live. We got to go out here and get it on our own. This is why you see Diddy's son right now dropping songs with Kanye West. Like, they trying to figure out how we can create some income outside of dad, because it looked like dad going to prison. And if he's convicted of the racketeering, if he's convicted, all this goes away. They said also Diddy's art collection is going to be seized. Combs is not known to own any colossal size Picassos, but he is believed to have an extensive art collection, including works by Jean-Michel Basquiat and Keith Haring. By the way, I make a lot of money. I'm gonna tell you guys a little secret behind the scenes that nobody really talks about. Artwork is so let me finish this. Somebody in the chat, remind me to give you guys the gem on how people stay rich using artwork when we get to Entrepreneur, our community hour. When we do our community hour of this live stream, please remind me to teach you guys about leveraging artwork. So just kind of finishing what Diddy is going to have to forfeit. In 2018, he was revealed to be the mystery buyer of the renowned painting Past Times by Kerry James Marshall for $21.1 million. So Diddy bought this artwork for $21.1 million. I'll tell you guys why in a second. Diddy's cars. It says at one time, Diddy had a fleet of 20 luxury cars, including Rolls Royces, Bentleys, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, ultra luxury Mercedes known as Maybachs. So these are the things that are at risk, right? Okay, cool. There wasn't too much more, so it's gonna be on top of my mind. These are the things that are at risk. These are the things that he's gonna have to forfeit if he's convicted of the racketeering. So his homes, all of his homes, his plane, his jet, his record company, the parent companies, right? His art collection and his cars. All those things are going to be owned by the government once Diddy is convicted, if he's convicted of the racketeering. So this is important because you guys need to see that this is not just, it's not all about justice. And now we're going to jump into the community hour. It's not all about justice, right? And in the community hour, we talk about these topics where you guys learn something about life, and I can help you guys probably put this in simpler terms so we can learn something about things that will make you better in your business, your profession, or whatever you're going to do with your purpose. It's a business for the feds. right? And when you talk about they're going to own a $48 million mansion, then another $19 million mansion, and then they're going to own his companies, and they're going to own the $25 million jet, and they're going to own the $30 million art collection or $21 million art collection, then all the luxury cars, which we can imagine amounts to maybe $10 or $15 million as well, right? Nobody's going to question the feds on where does this stuff go. In the Bible, there's a scripture in Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 26, I believe. It says, for the one that pleases him, God has given wisdom, knowledge, and joy. But for the sinner, God has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to give to the one that does please God. That means you might have some success. And the reason why God would allow anybody to have success is because God cannot lie. Not God does not lie. God cannot lie. So when God lays out principles, when it says that the diligent prosper, when it says that God has principles for success, serve one another, working for each other as if working for the Lord himself, right? Like the principles don't care who applied them. The seed don't care who plants it. The seed has to do what the seed is created to do. Regardless if a good person plants it, a bad person plants it, black person, white person, tall person, fat person, short person, skinny person, it don't matter. So anybody could become successful, but God kind of wrote in a fine print in the contract of success. And that's what Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 26 says, which is for the one who pleases him, God has given the wisdom, knowledge, and joy. But for the sinner, God has given the business of only gathering and collecting to give to the one who does please God. Diddy had the business of gathering and collecting. That's a lesson for all of us. Don't think that your blessings are yours, right? So all these years, everything he worked for, all his life, since 1993, probably before that, the things that he worked for, all he did was gather them and collect them to pay these lawsuits. 30 million to Cassie here, this many million to that one there. He still got 70 lawsuits that he got to face after this trial is over, man. 70. That's the business of gathering and collecting. You didn't gather all this stuff, collected it, and now you just got to give it up to the government like you never worked for it a day in your life, only because you decided to sin, which we all sin. But the Bible says to whom much is given, much is required. So when God give you a lot, he expect more. That's what that means. And when we start thinking that our success is ours and we start doing things contrary to what it was meant for us to do, that's when you start getting the business of gathering and collecting. Right? Hit that like button if you guys are still watching. And in terms of the artwork, I'm gonna give you guys a little millionaire secret. The artwork, who determines the value of a painting? The buyer. I feel like this is worth this much, so I'm gonna pay this much for it. Sometimes the creator, but if Basquiat is dead, how does Basquiat determine the value of his artwork, the price of his artwork? Somebody else. So this is where appraisers come in and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, this is worth 20 million. All right. It's a painting, fam. It's a piece of parchment. It's tapestry with paint on it. But this is a millionaire, billionaire secret. If I buy the painting for 20 million, then what could I do? I could say I have a $20 million asset. If I have a $20 million asset, what can I borrow from the bank? I think it's like 70% or something like that. 50%. Well, let's say it's 50%, whatever the number is that the bank lets you borrow against your own assets. So for all of us, here's a lesson. Income follows assets. I'm a millionaire. I'm going to tell you the secret. You want to become a millionaire? You got to go collect assets. Assets. Right? You can increase your net worth with assets alone. In our community, when we come from poverty, we think I have to collect $1 million to become a millionaire. In reality, a lesson I had to learn was it don't matter how much money. So I wanted to go apply for something when I first got rich, and I got denied. Not because I didn't have the money, but because I didn't have the consistency. It was my first year being rich. And they was like, nah, we need to see this for 2 or 3 years. I'm like, what? No, I'll pay the whole thing in cash right now. I need to be approved. It's not a money problem. I'll pay the whole thing in cash. And they was like, no. I thought they was racist. And I thought they was mad because I was young at the time. I was like 26. And I'm like, oh yeah, y'all hating on me. They wasn't hating. They got a procedure for how things are valued, right? So I had a client, one of my clients, asked me, he was like, bro, I can't get a loan. Like the bank won't give me a loan for the business, but I got the money in the account, but they won't give me a loan. The reason that they don't do that is because, and the reason that it happened to me as well is because, and mine wasn't a loan, I was just trying to apply for something, but the reason that they don't do it is because if I have $1 million in my account, that doesn't make me a millionaire. It doesn't. Let's say the bank looks at it like this. If I go and spend $400,000 and go get me a Rolls Royce, how are they going to get their money back if they gave me the loan? So they don't care about liquid, they care about assets. So your assets are more important than the money that you accumulate in America. This is why they say America's run on a deficit. Because they want to see that you're spending the money to boost the economy for one, but they also want, and that's how they incentivize you to do it, because they won't let you get nothing for real that your money could really buy until you stimulate the economy with your money. But that's a whole other thing. So what billionaires do, they go buy these artworks and then they take them into the bank and say, I have an asset that's worth $20 million. Now you can give me the loan, which is crazy, right? So when you hear Jay-Z and Beyonce bought a house cash, they ain't bought a house cash. Technically, you could say that, but it's a technicality. What they did was Jay-Z took the artwork into the bank and said, yo, we want to get $100 million house. I have $200 million or I have $100 million, in assets. So for example, let me try to make it simple. If I have $1 million in assets, I can go in the bank and get the $1 million loan. They'll let me borrow against my assets. Right? But if I have $1 million in cash, they're not going to let me get the $1 million in a loan. So I can't put. So what people do is they borrow against their assets. If that makes sense, they borrow against I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. They borrow against their assets and then they take the loan, the personal loan, and then they go buy the house because the interest rate is so much lower than the home loan. So when you start buying mansions, it's called a jumbo loan. I know because, sitting in my mansion now. Jumbo loan. So it's a whole different process. But when you hear somebody, oh, they bought $100 million house cash. No, they leveraged their assets of $100 million, got the personal loan at a 2% interest rate, 1% interest rate sometimes. And they bought that thing cash like that. That's buying it cash. Right? So some people think that you went and dropped $100 million on something. No, you didn't. I have a friend, Jose Ramirez is a boxer, championship boxer, Olympian, Jose Ramirez. He was telling me about how he bought his Ferrari. He has a Ferrari. He loved his car too. And he said that he did the same thing, that he leveraged his stocks. He said he went into the bank with his stocks. Go on my other YouTube channel. I interviewed him. I talked to him. You guys, he gave the game up. But his Ferrari, he wanted a Ferrari. So he had I think it was 1.2 million in stocks. He just leveraged that, got the personal loan, took the personal loan, and he got at a 1% interest rate, like a 1.5% interest rate. And then he went and bought the Ferrari with that. And then he still has some money in his pocket left over because it's a personal loan. And then he took the rest of the personal loan and went and bought a business for his wife. And so the wife's business is like a salon. And so she's running that. So he got 2 for 1. Instead of just getting the car loan, he got the car and was able to put some money in his pocket to start another business. That's how millionaires think. Millionaires think in terms of assets. What's the asset I can create with the money in order to keep the money coming in forever? Anyways, the overarching thing, when you look at this Diddy situation, is he's been given the business of gathering and collecting. And I think that's a lesson for all of us, right? There's a lesson for all of us in that, which is understand when God blesses you with something, it's for purpose. What is the purpose? To serve others. to find a way to serve others. In all business, in I don't care if you're selling music, I don't care if you selling hot dogs, I don't care what you sell, whatever you sell, whatever you do, whatever your product or service is. And I'm talking to you guys like I would talk to my clients over at ULegend. Check out the website, ULegend Media, which we got a free, no cost, private live event. And it's a training. It's called From Stuck to Seven Figures. I want you guys to go over there, put your email address in, and let us send you the link to the private live event. It's From Stuck to Seven Figures at ulgnd.com. The website scrolling right here at the bottom of the screen is pinned in the chat. Go over there, hit the unlock access button, and watch that live stream. Watch the live stream, because it's going to teach you how to find your purpose and turn it into profit. And that's what we do here. I teach people, and my company, my staff, we got a lot of employees over here that's working on this, and we got a lot of clients as well. And I teach people how to turn their purpose into profit, because I don't want you working a business that you hate. I want you working a business that you love, or in your profession, I want you to be enjoying it because you're doing it so well. So we teach you how to turn your purpose into profit over there. That's the main goal of things. And my point is, serving people is the reason that God blesses you with your blessings. It's not just so you can have something or be doing this silly stuff that you think it's not. God don't bless you with a pool so you can fill it up with, pick your favorite drink and swim in it, like, or fill it up with gold coins like you Scrooge McDuck and stun on everybody. That ain't why God give you blessings. When God blesses you, he expects you to bless others. When Jesus Christ taught the parable of the talents, the reason that so if you don't know the story goes, this is a story Jesus taught. A king gave one person 10 talents, another person 5, another person 1. Talents were a form of money back then. So the king gave these people 10, went and multiplied his, 5 went and multiplied his. The person with 1 got scared and said, I know you're a difficult, he calls him a hard man, pause. I'm looking at me, pause in the Bible. He calls him a hard man. I know you're a hard man, so I just buried mine. And I gave you exactly back what you gave me. And the king got mad at him. Like, bro, you lazy. And the reason why is because God is a God of multiplication and abundance. Be fruitful and multiply. God wants us to do the same. Be fruitful and multiply. God is a God of multiplication and abundance. So when you have the ability to multiply, God expects you to multiply. To whom much is given, much is required. How do you multiply without connection to other people? You can't. When you're running a business, some of you guys out there listening, you guys or watching, you guys are running a business, but you're stuck. And this is what From Stuck to Seven Figures is about as well. Teaching you how to get unstuck from every level, whether you're starting at a job or whether you're working a business like a job. Some of you guys are in that level where you're stuck working your business like a job. And the reason you can't get to the next level is because you have no connection with other people. You're doing it all by yourself, and you're so scared to trust somebody else to help you that it's almost impossible for you to scale to the next level. When you get to 7 figures, I'll give you guys a quick run through. And I've been through every stage of this. I didn't come from money. I came from the hood. Been shot multiple times, jail, all that. When you get to the place of, okay, I got a good job. Cool. If you haven't found a good job, we'll help you get there. But got a good job. Then you get to the place, you get stuck there, and you're like, man, I want to be the boss. I want to run my own thing. I want to make my own income. I don't want to rely on some people. Get there, right? And then you go to the space of entrepreneurship. Then when you get into this entrepreneurship space, you start working it like it's a job, because that's what you're conditioned to do. I've been there. Then you're gonna max out at about $85,000 a year. Sometimes people get to 6 figures doing it, but regardless, you're going to be in a space of doing all the implementation. I'm implementing. I'm doing all the labor on the job. I'm wearing every hat. When you get to the high 6, 7 figures, which is where I am currently, what I've learned from being is it's about implementing systems and treating it like my wife would say, treat it like a machine that runs on itself. My wife taught me how to do a lot of this stuff. Brilliant woman. My wife was like, when I first started hiring, I was like, man, everybody got to make me money. If they don't make me money, I ain't hiring them. Everybody doesn't make you money, but maybe this person that you hire helps the other person that does make you money make you more money. Simple stuff like that. All right. So you start thinking about it as a system. But there's a level to all of it. But in all levels, you're supposed to multiply and serve others. You got to be able to connect with other people in order to serve them. And when I look at the situation with Diddy, I see a classic example of when you got the blessings, you started using the blessings to serve yourself, and you started loving the money and using the people and loving the power instead of the other way around. You use the power to serve people. You use the money to serve people. And I'm probably one of the most compassionate capitalists, but I do believe I am grateful for capitalism, because I know to help anybody, I still have to collect the money like a capitalist. If we don't have money, we don't have nothing. That's why the Bible talks about it so much. 2,350 verses in the Bible about money. It talks about money more than it talks about prayer. I believe God is a God of business and order and structure. And I think business, why I love business so much, why I love teaching business so much, why I developed an entire company to help people in their businesses and in their professions, because I believe that business is the formal entity that God allowed us. And I'll leave it there for today. God bless you guys. I hope that you guys learned something from this live stream. I hope that you was educated, not just entertained. Anytime you come to a Will Evans live stream, when you see that notification, click on, because I promise you're going to learn something. I'll see you guys on the next live stream. Until then, stay blessed. Love.